So up next, we have design, research, and product marketing coming together to chat about why a lot of enterprise SaaS and product features don't get used. The panel brings together Alastair Simpson, Judd Anti, and Claire Drummond. I'll give you a quick overview about this impressive panel. Judd Anti has had a varied journey from some big tech brands like Yahoo to Facebook and Airbnb. He's now a coach, consultant, and teacher who recently published an article about the reckoning going on in the research industry. Has anyone heard about that concept? Yes, so very excited and thrilled to have him here. Alastair is the VP of Design at Dropbox and serves as an advisor to many startups. He was previously at Atlassian and LexisNexis. Finally, Claire Drummond specializes in brand voice and is currently the Senior Director and Head of Product Marketing at Jira and Jira Suite at Atlassian. Wow, I can barely breathe. That was so impressive. Give him a round of applause. I'll just have Alissa come and take the stage. She is our product marketing lead here at Dovetail.
Good morning, Inside Out. Hi. I'm the unfamiliar face on this stage, so let me just take a quick minute to introduce this face. My name is Alissa Lydon. Normally, I am a product marketer at Dovetail, but today I am living my Alex Trebek game show host fantasy with my cue cards here. Sorry, panelists, I didn't let you know. Now you have to answer all of these in the form of a question. Just throwing that on you. No. Great.
That's a cheat.
Perfect, A+. So I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. Honestly, as a product marketer, if I wasn't up on the stage with this group, I would be right in the front row there next to you, ma'am. Because I think this is a really interesting kind of bringing together of the minds, right? We're bringing 3 different perspectives on how customer insights should fuel the decisions we make, not just within our own respective functional areas, but really how we can come together and drive that through the business as a whole. I'm super excited to learn more about where those areas of overlap are between our 3 disciplines and what kind of perspectives I'm going to gain as a product marketer during this session. So that's enough of me talking. Let me kick it over to our esteemed contestants. Sorry, I mean panelists. All right. In a recent Pendo report, they reported that feature usage kind of conforms to a Pareto distribution. What that means is that there are only 20% of features that get 80% of the usage, and the remaining 80% were reported as rarely or never used. Now that on its face is a pretty shocking statistic, right? 80% of features are rarely or never used. But what do we actually think about this number as a kickoff here? Is quantifying feature usage the best way to understand the value that your products are producing for your users? Judd, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Well, we were talking earlier. I think 80% is probably low. Probably more than 80% of features don't get used. But I think one of the fundamental questions, I do think it's useful to look at how many people are using a feature, but I don't think that's the only way to quantify value. Case in point, I don't know if you followed the recent news about Snapchat's recent solar system feature, where they were basically using friend ranking in a way that turns out to be hugely harmful for young people in particular. You can imagine how friend ranking on Snap would be a bad idea. And the CEO came out and said, oh, well, only something like a fraction of a percentage of people are using it. Okay. Does that mean we should ignore the potential for a feature to cause harm? Well, no more than we should ignore the potential for a feature that's rarely used to be necessary. At Airbnb, we spent a long time working on things like error states. We hope a user never encounters error states, but they're really important when they do. Or at Facebook, we called them checkpoints, where it was like people needed some verification. Well, we hope you never get in one, but you better be able to get out. So I don't have a problem with quantifying usage, but I think it's probably not the only way to look at the problem.
Show of hands actually, how many people in here use audit logging? Yeah, not many. I didn't think so. But if you were an administrator or you were in a large company, that would be a key thing that you would want in the product, that you would need in the product to satisfy various compliance things. So it's never going to be used that much. But for a certain audience, it's going to get used a lot. And that is really a really important feature for them. But just by that show of 0 hands in here, nobody wants to use that. But again, it's incredibly important for specific customers. And I think, obviously, as Judd said, like, obviously looking at how many people are using your features is very important, but understanding how those features are used by specific customers and also how they drive, input metrics like usage, which then drive output metrics like retention and churn. That again is what you really need to be looking at in terms of like what is important for the specific customer that you're building for.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think that's right. I think there are some features that are just like checklists, right? It's table stakes. We have to have these things in order to even have a seat at the table. And so I agree that maybe on its face, while it looks shocking, it's not the only metric, but usage is not the only metric by which we kind of measure a product's usefulness, successfulness, value it's driving for its customers. And so if that isn't the best indication on whether your team is delivering the customer value in the product, what are some good ways to understand if you are building the right things for your customers? Claire, do you want to kick us off there?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Alastair's point about are you building for the right types of customers and making sure that your product is solving specific problems for specific cohorts within your whole customer and user base is a really good indication for if the product is actually solving those problems. And so I think like the data that we look at is difficult to really parse out because it could be really specific, especially if you're building features that are just table stakes or as a product marketer, we're looking at the competitive landscape a lot, and we're like, hey, we just need to like tick these boxes because that's table stakes, even though it might only be useful for like a small subset of users. But I think there's other indications for product usefulness, and you really have to get in. And I know that this crowd will vehemently agree with me that you have to really get into the customer feedback to really understand if you're actually providing good solutions that actually solve those problems that your customers need with your product.
Yeah, I think all of you researchers in the house have probably encountered this stereotype where people think, if you want to know whether something's adding value for a customer, just go ask them, right? Like, did you like it? Would you use this? They said yes. They said yes, everybody, it's a hit. And of course it doesn't work that way. I think we want revealed preference very often, right? So not stated preference. And so in a way, I think the best measure of value is loyalty, is repeat usage, is retention. But for a lot of products, there's a long cycle to that. Like you might be a daily TikTok user, but the average person only travels on Airbnb once a year, for example. So it depends on the context, what value really means and how often it can show up. And to me, that means, I think part of this conversation has to be, is the feature level even the right kind of resolution to ask that question? Like, Dropbox might have all these individual features, but overall, like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? It's not at the feature level that you really derive value. It's like this whole thing that delivers a customer experience.
Yeah, let me just jump in really quick on the value part. As a product marketer, that's something that we think about a lot as well when we take certain features to market. We don't want to take them to market based off of like that one in particular feature that is going to solve this one small problem, but more stepping back and thinking about what are the broader set of problems that we're solving, what is the value proposition, and what are all of the features within that is solving that broader problem. And that I think actually would help with feature adoption too, because how you communicate that to that subset of customers saying, hey, look, this is the value you're going to get from this whole collection of features, and this is this is an experience that you can expect. The one feature itself is not you're missing the forest through the trees there. It's really about that whole collection that delivers a really good customer experience that solves that problem.
Yeah, I think it's something we all always kind of miss. I mean, especially when talking specifically about features, you'll all be familiar with the jobs to be done framework, right? Benjamin talked a little bit this morning about, what's the right thing to build next, right? And a customer is coming to your product not to do necessarily one specific task. They might have a whole set of jobs, or something we miss, because we do talk about jobs to be done a lot, is actually they've got emotions and feelings. And they may be trying to feel safer or more secure with their specific team, which is something we hear from Dropbox customers. And we always miss that, and instead we try to design for like a specific feature, right? When you're actually trying to design to make somebody feel happy, to make somebody feel comfortable, to make them feel trusted, and also so that they can feel good when sharing things with their team, right? If they're looking at a product to use with their team and a specific cohort, how do they feel when they're sharing that product with them? And so if you're just measuring like a small little feature, you can often miss those larger kind of emotional things that you're designing for, and also the larger set of jobs that a customer is coming to your product to use.
Yeah, if you look at a feature level, I think you can find yourself getting distracted by all of the garbage, right? Like I think, I feel like there are a lot of products, you ship a lot of features and they become kind of calcified, right? It's hard to unship something for a lot of, even if you find, for example, in talking to customers that it's actively confusing or actively a problem, well, it can be, you can feel backed into a corner where you can't change anything without harming some metric that someone cares about. And when product development works that way, where you're like treating each individual feature that way, you really can't see the whole picture. You're never going to get to what value means at the level of this whole product. And maybe the like one learning there is that, is to try to always be pulling out from the level of an individual feature when you're making an argument about how customers are feeling or behaving or the value they derive. It is about a feature. We have to make a choice, but in the context of the broader product experience.
And there's also, if you get to that myopic feature level, right, often actually, if you understand your customers, you understand how they're feeling, you're doing a great job designing for them, what you'll find is that it's actually a set of features that they're actually using to derive value or to get to, Facebook popularized that aha metric like a number of years ago, but to get to some form of aha where they're going to be sticky and they're going to activate on your product, it's probably not one thing. It's probably a combination of a few different things that in sum provide and a customer will derive a lot of value, and they will end up being like a loyal customer for a long period of time.
I love how this conversation is really kind of rooted around, again, like customer empathy and understanding their jobs to be done. Claire, I know you probably feel the same as I do. It's hard to remove that voice in the back of the head of like, but what about the ARR numbers? Are we selling the thing? Is our revenue growing because of this feature? And I'm sure you've all heard a similar kind of comment or question. So maybe from another perspective, how do you think about connecting successful feature development with ARR or revenue growth? Is that a lagging indicator? Is it something that we need to more discreetly connect, or thoughts?
I think that if you are trying to connect a feature launch directly to revenue, then you're going to miss the whole point. So, and I mean, marketing, it's not just what is the revenue, but also like, are you attracting new customers? Are you developing something that's going to give you a competitive advantage? Are you going to solve a new problem in a new and unique way with whatever it is that you're developing? So I think, kind of to the broader point that we were all just talking about, is it's more of like a collection of features that deliver an experience. And I think that's when you can really start to see any uptick in revenue that you might get from that experience, because you're developing something that is going to be unique, and it's going to hold you in a different light against your competitors. So yeah, I mean, obviously we all want to develop and ship products that make money. I mean, most of us do, I would say, I hope.
Hopefully.
There's some products that don't care about making money, but I think all of ours do. And
they might be in the wrong industry.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you definitely have that end goal in sight, but it's for sure, to me, there's all of these other metrics along the way that should indicate if you're going to achieve that goal or not, and it's definitely a lagging indicator, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, getting down to tactics, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this, but who here knows what the input or driver metrics are for the product that they work on? A few? Benjamin has got his hand down. But if you understand what your input or driver metrics are, if you've got a lagging metric like CSAT or ARR, your input metrics are the set of things that you believe will drive your end kind of result in revenue or customer satisfaction. And so for a product like Dropbox, might be uploading or sharing files, it might be inviting team members, right? And so if you actually want to reverse it back, it's like, okay, if you understand what the core jobs to be done are for your customer, you can then break that down into input and driver metrics, and you can then see, okay, what are the steps that we're trying to get a customer through to make sure that they're easily able to do the things that we believe will eventually drive revenue. And so if you're not familiar with those things, I would really encourage you to go and understand what those things are, because they will be much better indicators of success, and there'll be things that you can actually move, right? It's like you can actually look at, and in qualitative ways, okay, did we make this thing easier to do for a customer? And then when you ship that thing, did it actually move that input metric from a quantitative measure? If so, why? Go and understand and rinse and repeat. And then does it drive your kind of output metrics or the lagging metrics like CSAT or ARR?
I can think of one kind of concrete example that showcases that, it's really, in order to tie like some type of feature to revenue, unless you feature gate it and monetize that feature, you're not going to really know exactly what that specific, innovation can be attributed to. But so Jira has a feature. It's now called Advanced Plans, but it used to be called Advanced Roadmaps. It's in our premium edition. It used to be a product that we acquired, like long journey. Anyway, the value proposition that this feature has is really about connecting lots of different teams to an overview roadmap view. And that resonates. I mean, every customer I talk to wants that kind of, they're trying to solve a cross-team collaboration problem, and they need an overview to see a view of dependencies, to see where there's blockers, et cetera, et cetera. So we launched that feature within our premium edition, and we actually can attribute quite a bit of revenue to that one thing. But when I step back and I think about what is it really the roadmap view? No, it's the value prop that actually delivers to customers, and that's the thing that really resonates in the market. That's the thing that people come to Jira for. That's what they expect to see. And yes, there's all kinds of friction that comes with that because it may not deliver exactly what you as a user want it to. But anyway, I think that's a good example of where it's really about that value proposition that you can attribute to that revenue growth.
I want to add just one more thing that's totally against like the whole ARR thing, but something that I think is we often overlook and we miss as well is coming back to that emotion and feeling that I was already talking about with customers. And I think it's important that when you're considering the core kind of journeys that you have for a customer, that you also think about how do you actually delight that customer in a small, meaningful way. I think to some things that you can't measure them, right? They're not going to tie to a particular number, but it's a feeling you're trying to give to a customer. And in Dropbox, we have lots of small pieces of motion design at specific pieces of the customer journey. Like if you upload many, many files, like you'll get a small little upload balloon that'll come up. And it's a small moment. We can't measure that. We can't tie it to kind of ARR, but it's important that you're putting those small like kind of Easter eggs in so that customers feel like you care, that you care about those moments of detail and delight in a customer's journey.
Love it. I love all these different kind of ways to approach how we define value for the customer. I'm already coming away with a lot of ideas, but even all that withstanding, I think we can all agree that it's true that we've all been part of organizations, we've been part of projects where we've wasted time and resources and launched features that ultimately were big flops. And I think especially in today's economic headwinds and organizations needing to decrease the amount of waste and be efficient, it's really important that we take a step back and understand how we can more efficiently deliver those valuable features to customers so we can all be successful. And so let's start with maybe a diagnosis of what you see is the main problem here. In your experience, what are kind of those common pitfalls, whether it's like in the planning process or during R&D, that ultimately lead to building the wrong thing?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I would say it's maybe two things. The first one is that most product development processes are really, really broken. And one of the stereotypes which I would say is true is like, why is so much enterprise software so bad? It's because most of those product development processes are driven by sales organizations. And there are a lot of, and so if your product is built on the basis of feature requests and complaints, wherever those come from, they might not come from sales, they might come from admins, they might come from, I've worked with companies that the way they do product planning is really just polling all the product managers to get in a form to get all the ideas for things they think we should fix next quarter. And then they have a meeting and rank them, and that's the roadmap. I mean, this is a ridiculous way to build product. If you build product that way on the basis of just isolated feature requests or complaints, rather than an overarching strategy and vision for the problems you're going to solve for your customers, you will end up with, forget 80%, 98% of your features will be unused. You will build the wrong things. And a lot of that might not come just from other sources, but it also comes from, let's say, executive whims. And so to me, that's the second thing that I think is, if I'm having a diagnosis, which is hard to do across the board because so many companies are broken in so many different ways. But it's that, the way that we want to be customer-centered, the way that we want to be insights-driven, isn't something that can happen in a waterfall fashion, right? It has to happen all along the product development process, because it's beautiful to think this linear process where insights leads to beautiful evolution of thinking and design, and then afterwards we get feedback and repeat. There's lots of models that are like that, but I don't think that is like any product development process I've ever been in or seen. It's way messier. It stops and starts and fits and backtracks and rethinks, and so it has to be way more adaptable with that. And that means you can take a tool, a really cool, beautiful, holistic tool like Dovetail, and just use it to cherry pick evidence to support the thing the founder wanted to build anyway, right? It's great at that, I'm sure. But if instead you use it to genuinely adapt to the ups and downs of a product life cycle all along the way, then you are much less likely to build something that people don't use. Those are two diagnoses. I don't know. There are lots of them, though.
Yes, a lot to unpack there.
I'm a broken man. I don't know what to tell you.
Do we need to have a therapy session?
You see how she's standing away from me?
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with you, especially on the cherry picking part. But I actually think there's a couple elements in just the ideation and planning kind of cycle before you're actually going to even kick off development or design, whether it's waterfall or not, is, do you have the right stakeholders in that phase, and when are those check-ins? I mean, I would venture to guess that most product triads don't include marketing. Raise your hand if you have marketing in your triad. Okay, that's 4 people.
2 people.
Cool. Woo! And I would say that, at least at Atlassian, our researchers want to be a part of that at that table too, which, makes a lot of sense, I would say. But really what we're trying to do is who's going to represent the voice of the customer, and also making sure that you have the right metrics in place that are going to motivate that team to deliver customer value and not necessarily just revenue. And so, I see product marketing as the voice of the customer, and we really fight hard to have a seat at the table in those early stages of developing not just features, but what is the next release, what is the next launch, and the collection of all of those features that will resonate, and we can tell a really compelling story around it. And if that isn't in the very beginning of the phases of that life cycle, then what you get in return is a bag of parts that you have to try and put together and make sense of it. And those pieces don't always fit together. So if you can't explain what you're building to customers, then how do you expect anybody to actually use it? So I think that's the biggest issue that I see.
I'll add one from the designer lens. Maybe you've picked the right product or feature to build. I know this will resonate with Benjamin because we talked a lot about this. But as a designer, there's anybody, but there's a syndrome called not invented here syndrome. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, so it's the tendency to like ignore or push against like known things or patterns that are out there. And as designers, I'm a designer, right? My t-shirt says I'm a designer, so I must be. As a designer though, sometimes you fall into the trap. You may have, the insights team, the product managers, the founder, whoever may have defined the right thing, but then as a designer, you take that and through not invented here syndrome, you want to like redesign like a known pattern, right? You want to make it innovative in inverted commas, right? And what you end up doing is you design something that's known, and then a customer comes to the thing and they're like, I don't know how to use that, right? Because you've changed it from what their own mental model is of how they want to experience that. And you've done it, sometimes you need to innovate, but sometimes you've done that for no good reason, right? And you may be far too ahead of the curve, and actually it doesn't resonate with your customers. And so I think that's something that also kind of as a designer we can fail to.
So many great ones in there, but I'm obviously going to call out the bringing PMM into the room. Plus one to that. At Dovetail, actually, we have that model. Our product marketing team sits with design and engineering, so can confirm it's a great way to think about it. And I'm already kind of hearing some solutions here. We've diagnosed the problem, get better collaboration, bring more user research into the ideation or even before phase. What are some other kind of action items or things that these folks can take away to help overcome the obstacles they might see in their organization? Maybe it's some common traits you've seen on some really high-performing teams you've worked with. Any sort of tips and tricks on how to build features that actually get used?
I can start. We've talked about the first one. It's because I think about this in terms of three things, right? It's like, okay, you need to be a proper cross-functional team, right? Building products is a team sport. We've heard that a lot, but it really is. And I'm constantly surprised when talking to different people around the industry, the amount of silos that exist, or the waterfall nature of like, okay, we're research, we're going to go do the research, and then in 6 months we'll come back and that's not how it works, right? You need to be a proper cross-functional team who are working together with a shared common goal, which comes to my kind of second point around having a agreed kind of shared goal. I don't like the term vision because I don't really think that's kind of helpful, because what does that mean, like 5 years out and we're all waving in front of glass? But I think if at Dropbox we use the kind of twice a year release model, and so we try to get ahead of saying, okay, in our fall release, what do we think is going to be coming, and what's the kind of high level view of what that customer experience might be, or the themes of and we also integrate product marketing, so it's like, what is the customer value that they want to get to? So an agreed kind of high level view of where you're going, or you think you're trying to get to, knowing that you're going to need to iterate and speak to customers along the way. And then as part of that, how will you know if you're successful? Like, what are the metrics of success that you all as a cross-functional team can align to? And then the third thing, which a lot of people talked about in press, but having good trust and psychological safety as a team to be able to challenge one another that, hey, where you think you're going might not be the right thing based on a new insight. But building that trust, I think, is incredibly important. It's something we were all talking about. You can have the best processes in place, the best practices in place, but ultimately you're working in a team. Teamwork's really messy. We're dealing with humans. Humans have emotions. We have all of the things that come along with being a human. And so building up that trust and psychological safety as a team, I think, is really important. And the onus is on all of us, not just leaders, to invest in that, find out who your partners are, find out what they do outside of work, building up that kind of trust so that you can challenge one another in a really respectful way. And then I think, ultimately, if you wrap all those things up, it's kind of like, that's a growth mindset. So having a growth mindset to how you're building products and services so that you can do the right thing by your customers.
Yeah, I'm going to mirror much of what you said, but I think having a shared vision of where you want to go is probably the best tip I can give, because so many times I see different product teams, even within a single product, but are developing different feature sets, not be aligned on what they're actually trying to do and who they're trying to do that for. Like, what is the problem that they're actually trying to solve across and just really knowing who you are and what you want to become, especially as products become platforms and there's more products in the mix and there's more leaders in the mix and they have different opinions about where you're trying to go and what market you're going to serve. Really making sure and pressing your leadership to have that vision and make sure that everybody is really aligned to that vision and goal will really help kind of cascade how you actually get there. Because when you have a shared vision, then you can start to use things like good sense and intuition to help you make decisions, because you know that this is going to be the direction that you're trying to get to. And it will help you not cherry pick the customer insights that just help kind of frame up what you're trying to do, but you can also say, well, look, this is half supported by insights and this is half supported by strategy or some mix of the two things. And I think that, when I look back at the most successful launches we've had, it's been a mix of those, but always knowing where we're trying to go. And it seems like such a basic thing, but there's so many times I see different teams just be like, I don't know actually where the North Star is. So yeah, I think that would be mine.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add that I think we're all kind of saying is that I think maybe the overarching solution is constant engagement. Thinking of like if we're product people, we're not trying to think of an insight as an end in and of itself, but as a artifact we use inside of relationships. And what that looks like is constant engagement across the product cycle, not in a waterfall fashion. Customer insights are not something that only inspires the idea to develop a feature. They are consistent across the development cycle, and that means that as researchers or designers or marketers or product people, we better have this constant point of view where we are willing to be wrong. We're looking to falsify our beliefs constantly. We could argue about whether agile as a product development model is dead, but agility will never be dead, right? So like the fact that we need the most successful product processes that get features efficiently, that deliver value, are ones that adapt constantly to new insights, not just to the beginning and the end or at any particular point. And they do that because the relationships and the collaboration are strong. Everybody's listening. Everybody has high trust. Everybody's willing to be wrong, even looking to be wrong, and always bringing in new insights. And I think that's a mind shift for a lot of people who do research in particular, who think of the insight as the artifact that it is their job to deliver. And that is something someone else will use to make a decision. And that's a recipe for being sidelined. You're just throwing an insight over the transom, hoping that it works, rather than building a strong relationship, which I'll grant takes two sides. You cannot always do that by yourselves. But thinking of the relationship as the artifact for the most successful product development process is one way out of building features no one uses, I think.
I love that you use the term agility there, because I think that's something we can all, if I think back to the best teams that I've worked in, it's not been about, the team hasn't functioned really well because of some process, like whether it was agile or we were in a design sprint or whatever like that. It was because we were all had agility, and we were all, Judd says this, but I think it's worth double downing on. It's like, we were all willing to be wrong. We weren't going in with like, okay, I've got the solution or I've got the insight. It was about like collaborating as a team, showing vulnerability, and being willing to say like, hey, like my solution might not be the best solution, or my insight may now be proven wrong based on new data that we've had, right? And I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I think that what that does too is it really empowers everyone to go out and collect those insights and bring them back to the group, rather than just rely on research. Like, oh, research is going to go answer that question for me. Like, I am a product marketer. I'm talking to customers frequently. And so I should feel empowered to bring my insights to the table. And then if we have a safe, psychologically safe environment, we can lay everything out and see, which idea is winning? Which idea do we want to go after? What do we want to chase? What do we want to build next as a group, rather than it being one single, decision maker. I like that. I like that paradigm a lot. Okay, great. And so maybe in the spirit of that, we have a researcher, a product marketer, a designer, all here on one stage. We've been talking a lot about cross-functional collaboration, and there's already some great takeaways here for me. Do you have like one more piece of advice for the group on how you can really maximize like deep collaboration and build those connections to deliver shared success.
I have one piece of advice that I can't take credit for. I'm going to name drop Barack Obama, who gave this advice to Airbnb.
Good friend of yours, Judd?
Yeah, you know, my buddy. No, he did not give this to me personally.
Big UX research guy.
Yeah,
Barack
he loves
Obama.
research.
Little known.
No, but he said to Airbnb and to Brian Chesky, the CEO, he said, institutionalize your intentions. He said the way to make any change sticky is to create structures that scale, that make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard, right? So, you know, you can fight for a one-off, but if you want to encourage better collaboration, think about how you create an agile product development cycle, how you create meetings and forums for communication and sharing, how you create a research process or an insights development or a custom voice of the customer process or how do we write our PRD, but you design a scalable process that makes the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard, which means the right inputs, the right people at the meeting. We don't, you know, you start from the premise that we all need to be there, not because we're going to make a decision by consensus, but because in a truly effective cross-functional team, you're not just providing inputs for somebody else's process, you're a part of the decision-making process. So what if researchers and designers and writers and marketers and everybody were not just influential for others' processes, although they are that too, but they were part of it themselves in making decisions. So what is the structure that would institutionalize that intention?
I'm going to go hard left here and not talk about Barack Obama.
Not a friend of yours?
Where do we go from there?
There's nowhere to go from here. So something really simple, I think, that I learned during the pandemic when, you know, prior to the pandemic, my team was in Sydney and in San Francisco, and there was a real water cooler that was happening in Sydney. I would go to sleep, I'd wake up, decisions were made. Collaboration was not happening. I was informed, but I was not part of the process. During the pandemic, we weren't able to do that anymore. Everybody was remote, and it actually unlocked this really interesting insight to cross-functional collaboration that, you know, aha moment for me, which was that transparency in the thought process is key to making sure that you're bringing in people at the right time. And it's not just a meeting. It can't be a meeting. It has to be something easier and more fluid. And so, yes, it could be probably part of your processes. Not to product drop here, but Confluence is really good for this because it gives you visibility into that thought process, and anybody who is interested or a part of that team can then comment and collaborate along the way. And so I think we rely really heavily on these different rituals and checkpoints, and oftentimes they're just like face-to-face meetings or Zoom meetings. And there has to be another way where you're really bringing the like water cooler into the virtual space, and that I think will actually really help foster a lot of trust too, because you're just, you know, you're removing this barrier of you know, oh, if you're not a part of this 30-minute meeting, then you've missed out and you don't get to contribute anymore. So I think just figuring out a way to make that kind of virtual water cooler a reality within teams helps kind of unlock that.
I'm going to quickly give two things on either side of the spectrum. One is remote work's really hard, and I've already talked, I'm sure most of you are working in some form of remote setup, right? I ran Dropbox's shift to remote for 2 years because we treated it like a design process, but we also learned in the open. And so getting to know your team, building healthy boundaries, building healthy remote practices is something that we've published online. You can go and find it. It's called Dropbox Virtual First Toolkit, right? It's a set of about 20, 25 practices that will help build trust with your teams who are often remote. Highly encourage you to use that, right? That's something. On the totally non-Dropbox side, I'm a designer. You can see I'm a designer. But I'm also a father. I'm a son. I'm a husband. I'm a failed professional football player, soccer player. I'm a wannabe DJ. I'm not very good. The point being, I'm a bunch of stuff outside of work, and so are your coworkers. And so try to get to know them. Ask how they are. Actually care about the answer and ask follow-up questions. Treat people like humans, because we've said this a little bit, right? Like, you can have all the processes, practices, but we're all humans. Teamwork's messy. Care about the people that you're building products with, because if you care about them, you'll actually probably build better products together, because you'll all give a shit about each other and also give a shit about the products that you're building. So,
Amazing. Well, panelists, I've tallied up your scores. And the winner of today's panel is the audience, all of you. I, for one, found the session really intelligent. I found it informative. My perspective has been shifted. It's inside out, if you will. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.